Retirement living is on our mind every Saturday morning at this time on KFOR. It's the Aging Adventure, brought to you by The Legacy. I'm Dale Johnson, joined by John Kopetsky, Executive Director of Legacy Terrace at 5700 Fremont Street, and Kathy Blythe, who has an award-winning history here on KFOR and a very deep connection to The Legacy. Kathy, good morning. John, you too.
Good morning, Dale.
Mr. Dale, good morning, sir.
Longtime Lincoln travel and industry executive Steve Stromberg joins us later in a conversation centered on travel destinations that trip your trigger as an older adult. That's coming up on the Aging Adventure. John and Kathy stay with the travel theme this morning, bringing in TSA spokesperson Paty Mancha to talk about overlooked and often unknown traveling resources for the aging community.
Paty, welcome to our program. It's so exciting to have you here. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody from TSA except when I was going through the line and at the scanner. So it's really nice to be able to visit with you today. How has the COVID pandemic changed what the TSA, how the guidelines are and what you've been doing in your profession?
The COVID pandemic has impacted our operations. As a result of COVID, TSA has implemented a couple of changes that people will see at the airport. For those who traveled recently or those who plan to travel, what you'll notice when you get to the airport is that our officers will be wearing personal protective equipment. That includes a face mask that covers their nose and their mouth. Many of them will be wearing face shields. That's a personal choice. Wearing gloves. And a great reminder for everyone, if you by chance, when you go through the airport security checkpoint, are selected for a random search or additional search, you can ask the officer to change out their gloves before they touch any of your belongings, and they will gladly do so. So that's something that we've implemented since the pandemic. Additionally, we have used technology to help with less touch points. And what I mean by that is that rather than handing your identification or your ticket to the officer when you get to the checkpoint, you can actually lay down your ticket on a scanner yourself and it will be verified, so someone doesn't have to touch your belongings. Also, just a reminder, every traveler needs to wear a mask, is required to do so per presidential executive order, and that mask must cover your nose and your mouth. And not only do you need to wear it when you go through airport security, but throughout your trip, when you're in the airport and you're on the airplane.
I would suspect that things are constantly changing for TSA throughout all of the pandemic. And, you know, what is happening today may not be necessarily be the case a month from now or 2 months or 6 months from now, too.
So TSA constantly assesses and adjusts. And that's not just throughout the pandemic, but throughout its 20-year history. One of the big things that TSA really does is to employ technology. So we look for new technology, updated ways that we can make the travel experience faster, safe, and people have to spend less time throughout their travel.
Paty, just as a reminder for passengers of all ages, what are the current guidelines for what you can take on the airplane and what you can't?
Great question. The first thing that always trips up travelers is prohibited items. So we always have a great tip. Before you start traveling and before you start packing your carry-on bag that you're going to take with you, make sure that you empty it out. The most often heard excuse that we hear from travelers before when a prohibited item is found in their carry-on bag is, I forgot it was in my bag, or that's not my bag, it belongs to my spouse or my child. So first tip would be empty out the bag that you're going to use as your carry-on on the plane. Additionally, make sure that you pack your own bag. The second most often heard excuse is, oh, my spouse packed my bag, or somebody else packed my bag and I didn't know that this was in it. So again, make sure you pack your own bag. Just be aware that any article that can be used as a weapon is not allowed in your carry-on bag. However, it can be in your checked luggage. So anything that includes a knife, a stun gun, any type of Kubotan, pepper spray. We see a lot of personal protection equipment that people have these days. That's not allowed in your carry-on. However, you can bring it in your checked luggage. And that takes us to firearms. In the 20-year history of TSA in 2021, we found more firearms in travelers' carry-on bags than any other year during our history.
Why is that?
Well, a lot of states now have very liberal gun laws. So people assume I can take my gun to the grocery store, why not the airport? And that's really just conjecture. It's hard to speculate, I couldn't tell you, but a lot of it, and again, when people bring a gun, we often hear, I forgot it was in my bag. Just be aware of what you're bringing. And firearms, you can travel with them if you choose to do so.
We have lots more information still to come from Paty Mancha of TSA. Some enlightening information ahead, so stay with us. You're listening to The Aging Adventure on KFOR.
Welcome back to The Aging Adventure, brought to you by the Legacy Retirement Communities. I'm Dale Johnson with Kathy and John, who continue the traveling conversation with TSA spokesperson Paty Mancha.
Paty, let's ask you before we move on to a different topic, if your item is confiscated because you just forgot it was there or didn't understand the rules, will you ever see that item again?
So TSA does not confiscate any items. Passengers can actually step out of line and put the item in their checked bag. They can voluntarily abandon it, or they can give it to a non-traveler.
You know, I know we had talked in the beginning of the show about special TSA accommodations for elder travelers. Can you tell us about those?
So many people don't know about TSA Cares. It's a program that travelers can assess 72 hours before their flight to get additional screening support. And this includes people with mobility issues, people who have lots of medication, maybe somebody undergoing cancer care and they have lots of medications and liquids that they need to bring, families with children with autism, or just someone who is a little slower and maybe gets nervous at the checkpoint. All they have to do is either go online or call 855-787-2227 and register. And then when they get to the airport, somebody will be waiting to offer that extra support.
Do the rules change on what you can bring on board with you in a situation like that?
Liquids. We often say if you can spill it, spread it, pour it, or pump it, 3.4 ounces. That includes anything like water, drinks, peanut butter, food, etc. Medication is on that list. However, if it is prescription medication or if it's a liquid that's used specifically to support some sort of a catheter, injections, things like that, then yes, you can bring them. But again, you need to contact us so that you can receive that special accommodation.
How about if they're in a wheelchair or with a walker? Should you still alert about that?
That's entirely up to the traveler. What TSA Cares provides is a little bit of additional support. So some people feel overwhelmed when they're at the checkpoint, especially since everybody's rushing. What TSA Cares does is that it provides that additional time. You don't have to feel like somebody behind you is sighing or making all kinds of little comments because you're taking too long with your mobility issues or with your walker or with your wheelchair, etc. This program is specifically designed to help people who maybe feel overwhelmed at the checkpoint, who maybe need that extra time, who have a child or a grandchild who doesn't respond well to all the stimulus and the noise and things like that. So,
do you need a note from your doctor if you have a pacemaker or you have an artificial joint or anything like that?
Not at all. Some people like to have it because they just say, that way I don't have to provide a big explanation. But no, you don't. And again, TSA Cares, when you get there, or even if you're not using TSA Cares, it's a good idea for you to tell the officer, I have an artificial joint. I have extra medication, because then that way the officers will know, okay, if something alerts, this is what it is.
Paty, before we go, many people who don't travel often may not be aware of the TSA pre-check option, which does have a fee, but people love it once they've tried it. It's on my list to do the next time I travel. Tell us how that works.
So basically, there is a fee for service. You have to be photographed, fingerprinted, and interviewed. And the great thing about it is that usually TSA pre-check lines are less than 5 minutes nationally. You don't have to remove your shoes, your outer jacket, your computer from your bag, and it's just a quick thing. So if you travel often, it's definitely worth the fee.
And once you've paid the fee, it's good for like 5 years or something. Do I have that right?
It's good for 5 years, and then you can renew it. And now you can actually renew it with a discount of about $5. So, there are some great advantages to it. Anyone who travels a couple of times a year, I think, feel that it's a well worth investment.
And how far in advance do you need to make that application?
I would say about 2 weeks before your trip. It's a pretty quick turnaround. Once you apply, you will get a known traveler number that then allows you access through the airlines to get TSA pre-check destination. However, TSA pre-check stores or locations are not always available in smaller airports. So some people find that they have to travel, or they do have pop-up stores or pop-up events at airports. So when we do have one for Nebraska, I will gladly share with your audience so that if they're interested, they don't have to travel to Denver or to a larger airport to get it done.
So much great information, and Paty, thank you for everything that you and your team do to keep us safe up in the great wild blue yonder.
You're quite welcome. And there is something, I know we're short on time, but there is something I would like to mention. Everything that TSA does, there's a reason for it. The reason that people take off their shoes is that we had someone who tried to bring a bomb in their shoes, or the shoe bomber. The reason that people go through a magnetometer is because someone tried to sneak in a bomb in their underwear, or the underwear bomber. And the reason that we limit your liquids is because someone tried to bring liquid explosives in a soda bottle. So just be aware that what we do, we work together with the airport, the airlines, and the traveling public to get you to your destination safely. So be a part of that, know what you bring, arrive early, and bring your mask.
Thank you for your incredible work, Paty.
You're quite welcome.
When we come back on The Aging Adventure, we take what we have learned this morning from Paty and apply it to destinations that welcome older adults. Travel with us when we come back on The Aging Adventure. You're listening to The Aging Adventure, brought to you by the Legacy Retirement Communities on KFOR. I'm Dale Johnson with John and Kathy. Now that you know how to travel, it's time to talk about where to go. Our expert is Steve Stromberg, longtime Lincoln travel industry executive.
Steve, we're so happy to have you with us. And before we talk about some cool places to go, let's talk a little bit about the guest who was just on before you, Paty from TSA. Do you have some things to add to what she said?
Yeah, I do. And she did a great job of outlining everything. And one thing I'd like to mention as a travel industry person is the TSA pre-check really is nice, and do try to get signed up for that, not having to take shoes off. Thank you, Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, as she mentioned. It is a really nice thing. So she did a great job of outlining everything, and appreciate her being on.
Let's talk about the scenarios where it's best to utilize the services of a travel agent.
In just about every scenario, I'd say, actually, but especially right now during COVID, things are just changing daily. Especially if you're traveling internationally. Things literally last week, London, for instance, changed their rules on testing and things once you get there.
And also, when somebody who has utilized a travel agency is traveling somewhere and they run into a big problem, they have somebody to call.
How did you know that was going to be next on my list? If you've traveled at all, inevitably things will go askew. They just do. But it is a great time, thank you, Kathy, to have a travel agent with you to hold your hand through those things and give a call and hopefully get things resolved, as quickly as possible, because they do. We'd like to think everything's going to go very smoothly, but and again, especially today, because things are traveling, or traveling is a little different, and you need a little bit more patience here and there.
Steve, what are the most popular travel destinations for seniors? And is that a seasonal thing? Does it vary spring, winter, summer, fall?
Yes and no. But so, it's a big wide world, and there's all kinds of destinations out there. But some of the more popular things would be cruises, whether they be ocean cruises or river cruises. Most of the river cruises would be spring to fall. Ocean cruises or Alaska, certainly Alaska in the summer, ocean cruises pretty much any time. But, the big thing to stress here is, I think, traveling doesn't necessarily need to be going on an African safari or something. To me, travel is just getting out and experiencing different things. Travel can be going to Omaha for a weekend, for instance. It's about getting out, seeing the rest of the world, meeting other people, being curious about other places, cultures. It really teaches us a lot about ourselves and being grateful to come home.
And especially since we've all been quarantined and isolated for the last couple of years, it seems like, I'm sure there's a lot of pent-up demand for people who do want to get out.
Let's talk a little bit about, it's normal to think of a plane option for traveling. And certainly, as you mentioned, we have a lot of beautiful places right here in Nebraska. We can also have a day trip or take a couple days to go somewhere in Nebraska or longer. But also, are you seeing an uptick in people who are wanting to travel by train or by motor coach?
For sure, and both domestically and internationally. But motor coach travel is a great way to go, kind of take the work and give it to someone else. You're not driving, you're not making decisions on where to stop and what you're going to see and having to make those arrangements. So it's really easy travel planning and decision making as well.
Steve, there are senior discounts in just about every place you can find these days. Is that similar in the travel agency or travel industry?
John, for the most part, for instance, hotels, car rental companies, Marriott Corporation, for instance, offers discounts to folks 62 and over, 7,000 properties around the world, 131 different countries. So yes, and car rental companies as well.
When should we have travel insurance? When is that most important?
Again, I will say many and most of the time, but especially now with COVID, and again, depending on where you're traveling, certainly if you're traveling out of the country, No doubt about it, especially if you're delayed coming home. It's a big, broad question as to the types exactly, but I would heartily suggest travel insurance, probably more so today than any other time. And a good travel agent can help you pull apart the various types and go from there.
Steve, thank you so much for all that great information and for the services you provide to our community. It's great to have you on this morning.
Thank you.
John, for more information about today's conversations, where can listeners go?
LegacyRetirement.com, or you can call us on the phone at 402-436-3000.
Kathy, good to talk to you again. We'll meet again next week. Join us every Saturday morning on KFOR for The Aging Adventure. Brought to you by Legacy Retirement Communities. I'm Dale Johnson.